Hello and welcome to my application assignment. My name is Ella, and today I will be doing my presentation on adaptive bowling. The reason why I chose this was because it's just something different. I kind of wanted to learn a little bit more about a different sport that is represented at the national level that is not talked about a ton. So yeah, and let's get right into it. Alrighty, so sport overview. So I really like adaptive bowling because it can be adapted to fit individuals with varying disabilities, whether that's physical, visual, hearing impairments. Like it's very, very accessible to people, not only through equipment use, which is shown in the ramp in the picture that I have on here, but also there's individuals called stick handlers, which help pretty much the position and body movements of individuals who are bowling and need extra assistance in completing the motion of propelling the ball down. And time delays are allowed. It's obviously depending on the situation, but time delays are allowed when it comes to like extreme situations, whether if there's like an incident that's going on or anything like that. But it's a very accessible sport in the way that it attends to everyone's needs and it adheres to everyone's needs, and takes everyone's kind of perspective and individual, you know, efforts into account. Then the other thing is that I really enjoy that adaptive bowling does not have any changes to the environment. They're the same bowling lanes that we have all been to. There's no special facility at all that people that are competing in adaptive bowling have to go to, which I really enjoy and makes the sport even that more accessible. So I really enjoy that. It uses the same scoring system, which I also think is really cool. But every single turn that you have two chances or two balls technically to roll down the lane. And it depending on if you're playing 5-pin or 10-pin, the scoring system is based on how many pins you knock down. So if you throw the ball in the first go and you only knock down 2 pins, you get 2 pins for that round. And then if you throw the next ball and you get all 8 down, then you get 8. So that round altogether you have 10. So yeah. And then if you knock all of your pins down on the first ball, it's called a strike. And if you knock all of your pins down on the second ball, like I explained in the example, then it's going to be called a spare. Each person gets 10 frames or 10 turns, if that makes sense. Like, so two balls is 1 turn, and you get a total of 10 turns. There is a foul line in effect as well on the waxy kind of floor. And if you are using any equipment of any kind, or if you are in a wheelchair, you do have to be behind the line itself. Now for singles and doubles bowling, there is a little bit of a difference in the scoring system. So for singles bowling, athletes score based on a 3-game average. So they have their 10 frames. That's 1 game. They have another 10 frames, and then they have another 10 games. And then they take the scores from each of those, divided by 3, get their average. That's what they score. So the highest number that they could possibly get is 300. Now for doubles bowling, it's pretty much the same thing, except you're working in a partnership now. So each partner gets 10 frames as well. They play 3 games all together, and then they get the average on both of their scores. So that would be the highest score would be 1200. Now for the local and provincial membership, in Lethbridge itself for local, the Lethbridge Sports Council holds blind bowling every Tuesday at 2 p.m. and they run from October to April, which is really cool. And they also offer 5 and 10 pin bowling. And in Lethbridge as well, they have the Special Olympics, which is held in January of 2024. And they both offer 5 and 10 pin bowling as well. And they usually have a Special Olympics every single year. And athletes are very encouraged to come out and participate. There are lots of different sports that are available. And yeah, it's just a very inclusive and friendly environment. I went last year and it was a lot of fun to be a part of. And yeah, it's just a great way to get involved in the community as well. There is a current provincial team for adaptive bowling. And they are selected through final scores at provincial games. So after your local games, so for example, if you go to the one in Lethbridge and you get a decent score, you get pretty recognized for your score, you get invited to go through to the provincial games, and your provincial team is selected based on the scores that they reach or get when they compete at the provincial games, and then they are selected to be on the team. So as you can see on the map that is also provided on the slide, there are 8 major regions that Special Olympics are held in. So there are bigger sections like Section 8 there. It's just pretty much all northwestern Alberta. And then, for example, there's just one, number 3, which is just Calgary. So it really varies depending on the size and amount of individuals that are participating in the Special Olympics in each kind of jurisdiction, but it's very, very covered within Alberta. So that's very cool. And then for the provincial Special Olympics, there's also a 4-year competition cycle for summer and winter sports. I'll kind of get into the difference between the summer and winter sports in the next slide. But yeah, so there's different competing levels there's different sports in each summer and winter sports, pretty much the same as the Olympics as well. Alrighty, for national and worldwide membership, for the national team, the Special Olympics Canada hosts every 2 years, and the competition lasts for a week. And the opportunity to compete to be a part of Team Canada for the World Games, which is in the worldwide or international level, which I will get to in a second. And then the last Special Olympics Canada event was held in Thunder Bay in February of 2020, which was the Winter Games. And then the Summer Games in 2022 got canceled due to COVID-related restrictions. For the worldwide membership for adaptive bowling, there are World Games that are held every 4 years. So the last one was held in Berlin, Germany in June of this year, actually. And our 10-pin bowling team competed there, and they were very successful. I'll get into the medals and everything that they won in a sec. But on the Canadian team, there are 8 individuals, and there are 4 men and 4 women. And on the pictures that we have just on the right here, the 2 ladies at the top are Shannon Dorian, so she's on the left, and then Caroline Theobald on the right. And then in the lower picture, we have Mark Richardson on the left and Ian Cushion on the right. So yeah, and then just kind of going over the medals that they won and the achievements that they got. They got 1 gold medal in men's doubles, 1 gold in women's doubles, 1 silver in men's doubles, 1 silver in women's singles, 1 bronze in women's singles, 1 gold in men's singles, and 2 bronze in men's singles. So overall, very, very successful year, and it was very great for their team this year. Alrighty, so getting right into the origin and evolution of adaptive bowling, just bowling in general to start off with. So 10-pin bowling was created by Tommy Ryan of Toronto, Canada, actually. So it's quite cool. That's a Canadian sport. But it was eventually changed to 5-pin due to complaints of it being too strenuous. So for example, the pins got reduced by 75% because they were very hard to kind of like pick up and move around, because back then we did not have the fancy machines and stuff that would realign the pins. Like, people would actually have to go and pick up the pins and put them back where they were, and had to remember which ones were knocked down. So the pins themselves were very, very large and very heavy. So the pins were actually reduced down to 75% of their original weight and size. So that was changed. And then there was also rubber bands that were put around the pins as well, because when they would get knocked over, there would be a loud kind of like clattering noise, and people did not like that very much. So they put rubber bands on them, and that fixed the problem. And then at the beginning, the bowling pins were actually knocked down by rubber balls that were pretty small for adaptive bowling itself. So the Special Olympics were created by Frank Hayden, who I probably should have mentioned in these men over here on the side, but the one on the left is Frank Hayden, and the one on the right is Tommy Ryan. So Frank Hayden, he was a sports scientist at U of T, and he created the Special Olympics. And the first ever Special Olympics were held in Chicago in 1968. And the first events that were ever held were track and field swimming and floor hockey. And there was quite a big audience that came to watch, which was really, really good, especially for their first event. So it was very, very, very good. It was a very good start for them. Alrighty, so moving on to competition and eligibility. For competition itself, you must be 8 years or older to compete in any sport at all, and you're only allowed to register to compete in one sport for provincial games. So unfortunately, you can't participate in two. And yeah, those are just the rules in general, I believe too. So and then for eligibility, you must be diagnosed with an intellectual disability. We did go over this in class as well, making sure of a proper doctor's evaluation is required now. Another requirement that you must meet in order to be eligible is that you must be a registered member of a local club. So example, in Lethbridge, you would have to be a member with the Lethbridge Sports Council. And depending on your jurisdiction, it depends where or what club you'd be, be training with. When it comes to jurisdictions that are a bit bigger and zones that are a bit bigger, there's going to be multiple clubs, but just making sure that you are a member of one of those clubs will make you eligible. Alrighty, and then the last requirement that individuals have to meet in order to be eligible are that they must be in good standing with Special Olympics Alberta and Canada. But basically, if you are not, if you're suspension free, or if you filled out all your paperwork or everything like that for your local club, then you should be able to be eligible. But that is largely based on your local club and the requirements that they have you fill out. For accessible simulation, like I kind of mentioned before, and I'm sure that you guys have noticed now, but adaptive bowling is very accessible in the way that it adheres to many people's capabilities themselves. So, for example, if we were to introduce adaptive bowling to an individual that is just trying it out themselves, that does have an intellectual disability or physical, we could take small steps in order to better help them adapt to their environment, because bowling in a lane is different than, what a usual environment would be for someone who's new to it. So starting out, if you were to book the alley or the lane just for yourself, like you don't have a group, that could help them kind of understand it and kind of get a sense of what the bowling, like the lane, is for. And especially if they watch other people as well, they kind of can get an understanding. But that is subjective to the individual themselves. If they do better with no stimulus kind of around them, then maybe it's a decision of going to a lane when a bowling alley is not super busy. So just really situational depending on the person. But you can begin with 5-pin bowling and eventually progress to 10-pin, making smaller or making adjustments so it's easier for the individual to knock all of them down, makes it a bit more accessible and makes it a little bit more easy to understand. Another option is instead of the big large bowling balls with the 3 holes in them for your fingers, we could begin with a smaller and lighter ball and just kind of fitting it in our palm first, getting a good feel of it, or even just moving your hand around it as well, and feeling what the ball feels like, is also a good example of introducing the equipment. And with that, you can also use a lighter ball if they're able to pick up the ball itself, use a lighter one. So when it's thrown, it's not as strenuous on limbs, and it also won't make loud noises when it's dropped on the ground itself. And then another adaptation that we can implement is that the gutters on the side, if the line even has the gutters, put little dividers up on the side of them to restrict the ball from going into the gutters. That could also be a great way to reinforce encouragement as well. Because if they're just learning the activity, and I speak from personal experience, that when you're just learning to throw a ball, probably will go in the gutter a couple times, and that can discourage people, especially when learning a new thing. And if that doesn't get changed, then it can turn into something that they don't want to do and they just lose interest in it. And if the individual needs access to a ramp, then it's provided almost at every single bowling alley. So that's also very accessible. you can also implement goals to try and knock down all pins without a scoring system as well. Like it's not based on numbers, it's actually about you, you know, understanding the skill and understanding that you have to knock all the balls down without a winning or losing type of outcome as well. Alrighty, and that concludes my presentation. Thank you so much for watching if you've stayed this far into the video. And yeah, I appreciate you kind of looking at my presentation. So yeah, thank you very much.